Okay, so I'm going to moderate this panel. It's on we've called it the future of sales brokerage. Make of that what you will, depending on the conversation that we have. We've got an esteemed panel up here on the stage. We're going to go through it quite quickly because Will's got to go. First of all, gents, clearly you need no introduction, but I'd like you to introduce yourselves quickly.
I'm Chris Sesselwright from Sesselwright & Partners. We started the business about 10 years ago. I've been in the brokerage industry for about 30 years now. Goodness. Started at Camper & Nicholson's, then I was a partner at Edmiston for 20 years, and now I've been doing my own smaller business.
I'm Will Christie Yachts. Been in the industry 22 years now. Started at Edmiston with Chris, then Wyco, where I became head of sales, and I started Christie Yachts 3 years ago.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tim Davis, CMO at Burgess. Been with the business 6 years and come from outside of the yachting industry, shock horror. So consumer brands from Virgin, Red Bull, Vodafone, all sorts of fun places like that.
My name is Patrick Coote, also been in the business about 30 years. I run Northrop & Johnson in Europe. We're also part of the MarineMax group, so we have Fraser Yachts, Northrop & Johnson, IGY Marinas, and various other brands in this space.
Perfect. Succinctly done. Love it. So we heard yesterday, we had Burgess up here, we had Jamie Edmiston up here, and they talked about the landscape as they see it. Let's take it down a level. I wondered if maybe Will and Chris, you could kind of talk us through the brokerage landscape, sales brokerage landscape, as far as you see it from your kind of end of the industry, if you like. Chris.
Thanks. Where do I see it? Well, I obviously get asked this question occasionally by friends and clients and family. And the one thing that I normally say is that we don't have a big enough slice of, of detailed information about the market in order to be able to give you a long-term view. We have a small volume of clients. We look after them quite well. They transact every 2, 3, 4 years. And so from that perspective, those particular clients, the future looks very rosy. But quite what the sort of global brokerage market or the global charter market is, I read the papers. I'm no economist. I see it's not quite as rosy this year as it was last year. We see that translated into the volume of charter transactions, but there's no big change. I feel it's kind of a rosy industry still.
Yeah, I think the positive thing is, despite quite a lot of headwinds, geopolitically, the US election always slightly hampers stuff, and that's just normal. We've seen it every time it happens. Wars, high interest rates. The industry is still in good health, and I think for us, the role of the broker is still very strong. So we feel pretty positive. It's not, you never get linear growth in this industry. It doesn't matter if you're a small company or a big company. Revenues are very much up and down with the kind of size of transactions we do. So, but generally we're positive, but I think that once the election's passed, I think we might see a slight uptick again. Well, that's what I'm hoping for anyway. But I do think some people are slightly holding back at the moment.
Okay, we've heard from Burgess, so we'll skip you, Tim, for a second now. Just Patrick, what are your thoughts from where you sit?
In terms of the global outlook?
Yeah.
I tend to rather flippantly say that I don't care whether the economy is booming or crashing, because in the first instance, people are making a load of money, they all want to buy boats, and in the second instance, they're all need to get rid of their boats very quickly and selling them as fast as possible. So as long as something's trading, I don't mind. We're in the middle of a transaction, so whether it's good times or bad times, it's fine for us. What kills us is when the market's turning and there's uncertainty, because when things sort of grind to a halt and slow down, that's when it is more challenging for us. Trying to bring a seller who's holding out for a higher price together with a buyer who's waiting for the market to drop and therefore not budging, that's when it's difficult for us. Right now, it's sort of not as rosy as it has been. We had the COVID bubble, 21, 22, 23. That's now come back to realistic sort of 2019 levels. So it's a horrible phrase, a sort of cautiously optimistic thing, but we're not in a boom, we're not in a bust, we're sort of somewhere in between, and it's okay. It's all pretty positive. Our 2024 numbers are actually looking slightly ahead of 2023 Q1 compared year to date, so it's okay.
Tim, you said that you're kind of an outsider to the industry, but so how, from your perspective, your unique perspective, how do you kind of see the sales brokerage landscape at Burgess from where you are?
I think I'd echo what everybody has said. I think when you look at the previous years, we've been very fortunate. It's been a very positive time. There's definitely pressure, both brokerage and charter at the moment, but I don't think there's any fear about what's going to happen. I think as Chris said, it's a cyclical market. So the ups and downs come, and we have to ride those out. So I think we're in a positive place. There is some interesting, as Will says, geopolitical events happening on the horizon, and I think they will have an impact. But there are always events every year. There is an event of some kind. So you have to roll with it.
Just as an interesting aside, what do you make, as an outsider, what do you make of Superyacht sales brokerage? Now you've come into the industry, how do you view it?
It's a really good question. I get my previous life directly before Burgess was at a luxury hotel brand, and I think, not just about brokerage, I think as an industry, and dangerous to say because I've been 6 years in it, but I am constantly amazed by how antiquated, and my world is branded marketing specifically, but alongside that is data, digital, etc. But the opportunity for this business to change, to revolutionize, to disrupt is enormous. And I don't believe there are any other verticals out there that have the opportunity that we do. But I don't believe there are any other verticals out there that are very slow to take that opportunity. So we either disrupt or we get disrupted. And I think we're in the next 12 to 24 months, I think something's going to happen, whether that's internally or externally. I know which one I'd like, but we'll see what happens. But it's a hugely antiquated industry with such potential. Where, as I say, having worked from mobile phones to health clubs to energy drinks, there isn't an opportunity like this. I just really hope collectively we seize it.
That's the most applause we've had all conference.
It's amazing what 50 quid at lunch will do. So.
That obviously went down very well. Chris, back to you. What do you see, apart from kind of the geopolitical and economic factors, what do you see as kind of headwinds to the brokerage industry, just in terms of kind of how it all works?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'll just go back briefly to what Tim said. I think it is a good point. We are a fairly antiquated business, or industry, I should say, fairly cottage still, in many ways. But it kind of is one of the things that I find that my clients quite like about certainly dealing with us is that we do go about it the old way. We do spend time in each other's company. We don't just send mail. It is that old-fashioned relationship-driven business. So whilst I see sort of the higher volume side of life, there may be ways to rev it up and disrupt. I don't necessarily see right at the higher end of the business when these people are used to a very, very good level of service. I don't know how that can be so disruptive. I wait to see, but at the moment I think that's there's this volume conversation again. And then you were saying what the second point you made was
headwinds just in terms of brokerage in general, rather than kind of economic factors.
Yeah, I mean, at the top end of the market, I'm going to talk 60 meters plus because it's kind of the market that we try to spend our time operating in. I mean, the volume of boats that are available to transact at any one time is always a headwind. You have very demanding clients right at the top looking for a second-hand boat that doesn't quite fit what they want. And so when you've got a reduced volume of boats, it means you're going to have a reduced volume of transactions. So that's kind of what we're facing at the moment. At the moment, there are a few really quite good boats coming onto the market, but we are only talking a handful, 10. We're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of boats. So for us, the headwind is always the quality of the second-hand stock.
Will, same question to you.
Well, I think Chris has covered it really well. I actually kind of want to go back to this. I'm seeing everyone saying it's antiquated, but I tend to agree with Chris that at this top end, we're not in a binary world where you can just put in a length and how many cabins and work out a volume. These big companies think they've got lots of data, and you can buy the data. There's lots of data out there, but it's making sense of it all and explaining it to clients. Because I was talking to someone about this the other day. I don't know any industry where the disparity between asking prices and selling prices is so big. So it's a confusing and opaque market, and you need someone with experience and credibility to explain that to you in person, not just. And I just don't think machines can do that. And maybe there's something I'm missing here. Maybe Tim and Burgess are about to do something really disruptive and clever. But I just think the role of a broker. I mean, there have been deals that have been done, and I include one that Chris and I did last year, which was complicated, and it required personal attention and relationships and communication. It wasn't something that a machine could do, because you're dealing here with people who don't sometimes need to sell. They definitely don't need to buy. No one needs to buy a boat. Your life will be perfectly fine without a boat. It'll be a lot better with one, of course, I'd say that. But sometimes you've got sellers who don't actually need to sell. And if the environment's just a bit incorrect or something happens that just upsets them a bit, the whole deal can fall apart. And disruption, how much that requires personal attention, that requires a broker, it requires diplomacy. And there's lots of stuff that happens behind the scenes that nobody realizes actually happens between brokers. We repackage someone swearing and shouting on a phone and take it to the owner and go, the guy's a bit upset because of this. We have to repackage it and make it actually work. So that's what I believe. That's why I believe brokerage will continue to be such an important part of this industry, because so many transactions just wouldn't happen without us.
It's interesting. We've heard a lot about AI in various panels. You're still very much sort of advocating the relationship-driven part of the business.
100%, especially at this end where there are emotions, there are egos, and that requires massaging a lot of the times to make things actually happen. It's very delicate. There are so many points in a deal where it's so delicate, and things can fall apart unless it's professionally handled.
Patrick, I'll come to you. Same kind of question about the headwinds just for brokerage industry in general, getting away from kind of the macroeconomic factors.
I think combining a few of the things we've touched on, I think if there's disruption coming to the brokerage world, it's probably going to come from within if it's going to be successful, rather than from externally. We've seen people try and come in with big plans and big claims that they're going to disrupt everything, but without a real true level of knowledge and insight into the industry, and they've failed. The companies the companies and the people who are in the industry and deep in it are the ones that know it and understand it best. And I think that's where the opportunity lies to really disrupt, but to do it well and to do it properly and to do it successfully. And that's sort of linked to my second point, which is one of the big headwinds I think we have as an industry is the good brokers versus the bad brokers. I think we're unregulated. Anyone can print a business card and be a yacht broker. Half the world seems to think that we're just sort of car salesmen that are just winging it and then earning a huge amount of money. I vehemently disagree with that. I think it takes minimum 5 years, more like 10 years to become a good yacht broker. So we're talking on a par with a doctor or a lawyer or a senior accountant. And I think a broker should be at the top table of the client, sitting with his lawyer, accountant, tax advisor, with the same level of professionalism and knowledge and able to bring value to the discussion. Far removed from the sort of chancers who we do experience and do cause problems, particularly from a reputational perspective.
So we've got kind of some different sizes of business here. We've got you, Patrick, part of Northrop & Johnson, part of Marine Max. And then we've got Will and Chris here, sort of independent on their own. Will, are you a disruptor? And what's the pros and cons of being your size versus Patrick's size?
Oh, I thought we might go down this road. Look, I think I just say to clients, go and meet a few brokers, but just speak to one. But don't just think because you're going to a big company you're going to get a good broker. There's a great disparity in the quality of brokers at big companies. I've worked at them. But find out who's actually going to look after you. You might get the sales pitch from the boss, but then get handed a junior because there is a big disparity. I think the advantage, and of course I'm here, I want to try and promote my business as well, but the advantage of having a small business is that I can have my hands on every single deal and I can have my eyes on it. Whereas at a big company can the boss, who may be a really key person, there's only so many hours that God gives you, which is why I want to stay small, because someone told me, and I don't know if this data's right, but someone who collects a lot of data, they said in the last 15 years, 20 brokers had done half of all the volume of commission in the industry. So you kind of want one of those. And then it really comes down to, do you enjoy their company? Because you will be traveling with them, and it should be a fun process. But go and talk to them all, but really ask them about their experience. You know, if you're doing a new build, has the guy ever done a new build? There are a lot of brokers that have never done a new build. Are they actually going to add any value? And then choose to work with one, because then they'll give you everything. But I don't really want to speak to clients who are speaking to 5 different brokers, because I also only have so many hours in a day. I'd rather have a small pool of clients who understand what I do, value what I do, and we have a really close relationship, and we'll just do lots of repeat business. They'll refer me to their friends. So am I disrupting? Not really. Am I doing a good job? I think so. And hopefully I get a collection of clients who enjoy working with me, and I enjoy working with them. That's my business. I don't pretend to be anything else than that. But I'm not trying to disrupt anything. I'm just trying to run a good, honest business and, you know, make as much money as we can.
Well, can I just add, I think probably you are disrupting the business. I tell you why I think you're disrupting the business is because you're running a very successful sales business without massive overheads. And I think that's one of the key differences between obviously big businesses and smaller businesses like Will and I, is that we keep our overheads to a relatively sensible level. And obviously as businesses get bigger, you have much bigger overheads. And as you get bigger overheads, you then need to ensure that your commission levels stay high. And then in the case of Libra, you need to start actually, you know, pushing people out of the market in order to be able to keep a larger share of the market for yourself. So I think that we are in some way disrupting the market in that, you know, I know when I was at Edmiston, we had 15 people in our information and intelligence department. And in my business, we have none. We have computers. And we all look after our own intelligence. And actually, as a result, our intelligence is, for the bit that we need, is very good. And so you know, keeping our overheads down, keeping our costs down, means that we are able to be very nimble, and we don't have to charge the huge commissions that everybody else has to.
Okay, Patrick, over to you. What's your thoughts on the kind of the advantages of the scale of your business over there?
I don't think it's a case of big versus small. As I said, I'd rather focus on good versus bad. And it's the bad ones I have an issue with. And I don't think we've got any bad ones on the panel. But in terms of is bigger better, I mean, yes, we have, as part of the MarineMax group, we have a very large number of transactions, very large number of brokers. And so a hell of a lot of information. As a brokerage company, we don't make anything. You know, we have no factory. We don't make a product. What is a brokerage company? It's a bunch of guys with a rented office and a few laptops. That's basically what we are. So we are a service business. And what does any service business really offer? Mainly it's knowledge, insight, experience. And I do think there is a benefit with the volume of transactions that we handle. And yes, some are 24 meters. Not all are 100 meters. They're, you know, everything spanning in between. But when you've got a sale completing every 72 hours, you're gleaning a huge amount of information about deal making, about dealing with problems. A lot of the smaller brokers, and again, maybe I should say the bad smaller brokers, will claim to have a great deal of experience, but they don't have a great experience of deals. And given the ups and downs of deals in our business, I think all of the knowledge and insight that comes from how to get over the finish line with the deals and the data and everything that sits behind that, as long as it's shared, genuinely shared internally, I think that does bring a huge benefit to the brokers working within that organization. And the second point, if I may, is moving on from knowledge, it's team support. It's true that anyone can reach externally for help with their KYC, or reach externally for legal support, or to an accountant, or to a yacht manager. That's all doable, and we see it done very successfully, and I have no issue with it. I do, however, think there's a benefit when a client comes to us to buy a yacht, for us to be able to say that my colleague who sits in the office next door to me can handle your yacht management, and my colleague here can handle your charter management, and we have 14 people who do crew recruitment, and we've got 23 marinas around the world, so we can provide, help you with your berthing. All of these services being in-house, I do believe there's a benefit to communicate, still providing a single point of contact to the client, but internally it does smooth the communication.
Tim, what's your thoughts from Burgess's marketing department point of view?
Well, we obviously skew more towards the Northrop and Fraser side, but I think has been already been said, but it's about expertise and experience. Whether we've got 250 plus people around the world, so it's a bigger operation, but you're dealing with one man or woman on any one day, as Will says. If it's the right emotional connection and the right experience and expertise is there, then that for me is key, and consistency of that experience is the most important factor. And yes, it's harder to make sure that consistency of experience is there when you've got more people, but I still think it's the right person on the right day. Yes, we have, similar to Patrick, we have X number of people who are all sat in the same office, under a different employment structure. But essentially, when the client says, "Have you sold my boat?" they don't give a monkeys whether there's 250 people or 3. We've either sold the boat or we haven't, and that we may have done that through data expertise or digital expertise, but kind of being customer centric rather than delivering great customer service, I think is a big point. And we are, if you want to book a charter through Burgess at 4 o'clock in the morning, someone will pick up the phone, but that doesn't mean that we're customer centric. And I think customer centricity about delivering that full 360 experience is ultimately what the client wants. Not that this is an us versus them or whatever, but Will, how do you kind of counter that? They've got all these people to do all the different bits. You've just got you and a small team. How do you sort of...
Yeah, it's interesting. It takes me 2 years ago when I was on this panel, and there was a guy who ran one of these big companies who said that a company like ours wouldn't be able to survive because we don't have that in-house capability. And the great thing about not having yacht management and not having some of these things is I can bring in the best person for that job. When I now want a budget for a boat, I work with 2 or 3 independent yacht management companies. I get it quicker than I used to when I was at a company because they want my business. They want to do a good job. There are plenty of good people out there. If you're building a yacht, if you go to a certain shipyard, your in-house team may not have any experience in that shipyard before, but you might I can bring it together. I say I'm like a kind of conductor. I'm bringing together an orchestra. So I'm independent. I don't make any money from that, by the way. There's no introductory commission, but it's just about providing the best for the client. So I'm totally flexible, and I can work with loads. And then there are lots of very, very talented people in this industry who don't work for big companies, plenty of them, and many of them will be in this room. And I can work with all of them. And sometimes these big companies, and I've seen it, are selling services that, frankly, the client doesn't need. If you go and build a boat at Lurson, you need a very different team to if you build a boat at Fedship. Some of the big companies just send you the same product for both, and you may be paying more than you need to. So that flexibility, I think, is a big advantage to my clients. And the information, talking about the information within teams, but as I said, there are kind of 20 brokers who do the majority of the business. I speak to Chris the whole time. I speak to other brokers the whole time. We share information. We are competitors, but we also see the benefit of working together. So the key people, if you have trusting relationships with other brokers, they will give you information because they know that you will in turn give it back. It is a small group of people, and we will have to work in competition, but also in collaboration. So you have to choose, who to pick battles with. But I think if you're a good broker, you realize that the other good brokers don't need to be your enemy, that you need to collaborate because we're all trying to make deals happen together. And that's where we want to be. We want to be on good terms with everyone, big and small, because actually it's an advantage to our clients. We don't want to alienate anyone, big or small industry. We have to work with all of them. And then if we're selling a boat, all brokers want to come to us. If we want to buy a boat, they're happy for us to bring buyers. And that's the environment that I want to create with my company anyway.
Chris, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, dare I say it, that there's a bit of a difficulty between this group that's now called themselves Libra. I actually call them the Large Overhead Yacht Brokers Association, but in fact, they're just called the Large Yacht Brokers Association. And the difficulty is that they have conjured up this way that brokers that aren't in Libra get a smaller share of the overall commission, which again, I understand it. You need more money to run these bigger businesses. The difficulty is that it doesn't serve the clients well, because if you're the central agent of a boat for sale, whether you're Campers or Frasers or Burgess or whoever, your job is to get that boat into the market and find the best buyer for the best price as quickly as you possibly can. By alienating a half or even 2/3 of the market, the two-man bands, the one-man band, the lady that sits on the on the Croisette in Cannes, the Will Christie with his great guys in London, whoever they be, by alienating that group of brokers, you're not actually serving the client, you're serving yourself. And that's the one key issue I have with the Libra system. Not that they don't need more money, I get it, but the problem is for the client, and that's we're a service industry.
Patrick, you're shaking your head.
Well, I've got to point out that's not actually correct. I've been a member of Libra since 2012 when it was first formed, and there's never been a discussion or an agreement about commission fixing within the group whatsoever. It would be completely illegal to do so.
Patrick, I was in the room as a partner at Edmiston when Jonathan Beckett came and sat with me and Nick and proposed this scheme. I was there.
There's been discussion, but never agreement. Let's just say that much. And Northrop have never changed their commission structure at all. So there is disparity amongst the members within Libra.
So I've got a question written down here that says, how much do the big houses play nicely with the smaller guys? I think we're sort of getting a glimpse there.
Yeah, look, I can see that it becomes slightly emotive. It's not supposed to be emotive. Honestly, playing nicely or badly, there's plenty of smaller brokers that don't play nicely, I can assure you of that. There are plenty of people in the industry at large that don't play nicely. The successful people tend to play fairly. And as Will alluded to, there are a handful of really good brokers around the world that create really good deals from which we all feed. Whether it be insurance or paint company or a shipyard or doesn't matter who you are, in the industry, the deals tend to be made either direct with a shipyard or quite often through a broker, and that's where it starts. And therefore all the good lot should stick together and sort it out. The difficulty I have is with the large overhead Yacht Brokers Association trying to alienate the smaller brokers from starting up and trying to stop them from starting up, trying to stop the competition. There's all sorts of reasons that they like to put around it. But as I say, I was sitting in the room when Jonathan Beckett coined the idea and said, don't you think that would be a good solution to me and Nick Edmiston? And that was, I thought it was more like 10 years ago, maybe it was 12 years ago. And now I'm on the other side of that. It doesn't do the client any favors, I can assure you. So actually, now we actually spend time trying not to work with Libra, which again causes division, which is not helpful for deal making. It's not healthy.
If I may, I think Will's absolutely correct. We have to collaborate, we have to work together, and we often do. The vast majority of cases, it's essential. In most deals, one company is representing the buyer, one company is representing the seller. There's no telling whether that's going to be a small company, a medium-sized company, or a large company. So it's absolutely essential. I mean, we don't actively not try and work with Chris, I can promise you. If he's got a listing and we've got a buyer, we'll happily bring the buyer to him. And it's really important.
I think my point about antiquation is probably just played out in the last few minutes. I think we just have to, this industry has to evolve. We have to look at commission structures. We have to look at whether it's brokerage, charter, the whole industry. I think it's just time. What is right to Chris's point, what's right for the client? Are commission levels sustainable at this level for the next 10 years? When you look at the value of the yachts, the commission levels that are received, is that going to continue? I personally can't see it continuing at this level for the long term. And I think one of my challenges from coming from the outside in is the very short-term nature of the business. I get that because it's a sale, isn't every business sales orientated, but this is about deals happening today, tomorrow, in the next 3 months, 6 months, new build, maybe 3-5 years. But what are we doing longer term? Where's the business going? Where's the industry going? Yeah, what do we do to trying to change that? It is about customer centricity, and I know Chris, Will, Pat, we're all saying the same thing. But I think, the Libra structure, whether it's right or wrong, big versus small, it's every industry I think has that. You're going to have the smaller players and the big players. But what are we collectively trying to do to make it a better experience for everybody involved?
Yeah, I think though I go back to the fact there's a massive disparity between the quality of brokers in all companies, and the industry should be more focused on making sure that brokers are professional, that they show integrity and honesty, and there's a lot of bad behaviour in big companies and small companies. And for me, I would like just to weed out the bad eggs, frankly, because we all get tired with. I think the problem is people think commissions are too high because they've seen some terrible service and people have been paid an awful lot of money for doing very little. I want to earn my commission. I don't want to be given money. I want to earn it, and I want to add value to the process. And the client think, well, actually, yes, you earn X%, but I saved much more in value add or savings if I'm acting for a buyer. So I think that's the problem. That's why people think commission is too high, because they've seen some terrible behaviour, some terrible service. And we should be doing more to root that out rather than this big versus small argument. We should be working for higher levels of professionalism. Maybe we need to be regulated in some way, but regulation sometimes comes with more problems than it solves. But I feel that the big companies should police that a bit more than be more worried about small companies.
Very good. Going to change tack very slightly. Here's a question. How do you put a valuation on a brokerage? Maybe Patrick, you've been through some mergers. How do you do that? How do you go about that?
It's very, very difficult. It really is. Because as I say, in fact, we've seen some rather disastrous stories within our own industry of acquisitions where there's been a high valuation placed on the business. In reality, they then realize that what have they bought? They've bought a rented office and some laptops and a few people who contractually can walk away at any moment. So what have you actually purchased? It's very difficult.
Anyone else got any thoughts?
Yeah, I have. I completely agree with what Patrick says, and I think that some of the problems in the industry have been some of these big companies wanting to sell, and one way to increase their valuation has been to have huge amounts of boats for sales in their books. And I've come across this a lot. This is something about the opaque nature of our business. I think one of the biggest problems in brokerage is the huge amount of overpriced boats on the market for sale, and it completely skews the industry, and it's really... It works. If you're a big company, having lots and lots of boats for sale, of which you only sell 20% per year, is a fantastic business model. But it does mean 80% of your owners are very upset at the end of the year. So I constantly go to pitches for central agencies, and I'm saying, this is where we should put the boat in the market. And I'm losing out and seeing the boat come on the market at 30% more than I advised. And I say, well, why didn't we get it? And they went, well, because they said we were going to get this. I said, well, of course, I'll tell you 150 million then, And you see this ridiculous thing where the boats is for sale for ages and ages and ages through a series of price reductions. How much is the owner then losing depreciation and continuing running costs? So that's what I mean. You can have all this information in these big companies, but are they actually telling owners the truth about where the boat will actually sell? Can you think of any other industry where there's such a big disparity between asking prices and selling prices? I sold a boat the other day for 45% less than its asking price. Been on the market for 3 years. How much that owner cost? How much did it cost him to run? So I think, there's the question. It's just up there now. But that is something that the market's got to change. And we don't have a land registry. We don't see what boats are sold for. I'm not necessarily saying we should have a completely open database of what boats have sold for. But that's about knowing what's sold for. That's about talking to other brokers, having that relationship with them, and guiding owners. But I'm just getting a bit fed up of going to these pitches and losing out to people just on the basis that someone's promised them this fairy tale valuation, which will never be achieved.
Well, can I just jump in there? Because I see that question. Obviously, it makes perfect sense. But one boat is not. We all know in this room, one boat is not the same as another boat. Two big white boats of 60 meters aren't exactly the same. They might be big and white and 60 meters, but that's where the similarity ends. And so, to start talking about asking prices and what it eventually sells for, based on exactly what it is that's why we're in business as brokers, because we can add the value to clients to understand what the difference is between those two big white boats. And then if you go right to the other end of the scale, you say this one big white boat at 80 meters, and you compare it with this 30-meter white boat. I mean, of course, they shouldn't be compared together. Each one is a unique thing. and each one has a history. Each one is a sum of parts. Each one, has its own build credentials, and each one should be looked at individually. And also the position that the owner is in when he's trying to sell the boat. What's he trying to do? Does he want to sell it right at the beginning of the summer? Does he want to sell it for any price right now? Does he want to sell it for the top price whenever that may come along? He doesn't mind. So every single one, relationship-driven, deal-driven, and individually driven by the product, rather than just this sort of putting them all together.
We'll go through some Q&A questions from the floor. I think there's quite a few coming in. Where do you see the buyers coming from when the currently unused, perhaps unmaintained 100-meter plus Russian tonnage inevitably comes to market? Patrick, do you want to take that one?
Well, I think this question was answered yesterday by Richard. It was very clear and I think very accurate and in line with what we see. Right now half the market is US, probably 30 or 40% is Europe, and then the rest is sort of a smattering of Middle East and elsewhere. If you said, if a 100-meter comes on the market tomorrow, ex-Russian owned, and the guy has no concerns that he might have a red dot on his forehead if he goes and buys it, then he's probably going to come from the US. That's probably if I had to come off the fence.
Tim, do you want to have a quick crack at that?
I would fully concur. I think that, the growth is coming out of the US. That's where I would expect it to come from. But, I think that the reputation of the yacht owner, etc., is going to be a driving factor in that.
Some funny comments there. How do people feel about the broker commissions? Is there an argument for a fixed fee model? Chris?
Yeah, I don't think a fixed fee model works. I certainly wouldn't work for a fixed fee because if you were to fix the fee and I did one day's work on it, I wouldn't feel that I'd earned that fee. Equally, if I'd spent 10 years looking after a client and his family and his children and his lawyers and bankers and flown around the world 10 times and eventually we end up buying a 30-meter, I don't feel that a fixed fee again would be sensible. So definitely, as far as I'm concerned, as a business, we have relationships with our clients. We lay out what we're going to do. We lay out what we think is fair. We make an agreement up front based on a bunch of criteria, and that's what we stick to.
Let's try this one. We talk about bad brokers and wanting to get them out. Why doesn't this happen, given they risk causing reputational damage? Any takers?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I think, I don't know. I don't know because there is no authority in our industry. The only thing is potentially MEBA, but I see people who are MEBA members. I'm not even one yet because it's almost impossible to become a member. But there are plenty of people there I can't believe are members because they are supposed to have ethics and all these committees and stuff. So I don't understand. I don't understand why some people who I know behave very unethically are on there. But what else have we got? I don't know. I mean, there is no authority. We're not regulated. And so it's a pity because I do think that a lot of good brokers are tarred with the same brush. And more should be done. I said these big companies, that's something Libra could be doing, is trying to help, and I think the problem is that some of the small companies have come from Libra companies, and there may be a little bit of bitterness about us going off and succeeding. But, they should be doing more to encourage companies like us to flourish than, and be more worried about these smaller companies that do us all a disservice.
But, well, I mean, what's the definition of a bad broker? A broker is somebody, obviously, he's got his business card, he printed it at the airport, and suddenly he's a broker. But a bad broker means he's actually involved in business, he's doing a business. There might be brokers that we don't like, and we think, we don't like their language, we don't like the way they behave, we don't like the aggression and everything else, but they are looking after a percentage of the market that certainly I wouldn't want to look after, and they look after it. So I think it's our job as brokers. We defend our clients, we defend the buyers and sellers from.
I have no issue with people who may be loud, rude, and crass. I mean, there's quite a few out there, but I have an issue with incompetence.
Yeah,
that's where it causes problems.
I think a bad broker does show how it should be done. by the fact that they're not doing it as well. So I think we have a responsibility to actually demonstrate how it should be done and highlight it. But it's not an easy situation.
So a bad broker is somebody that's managed to gain the trust of a client and has come into the industry, but then is not performing his brokerage tasks.
Someone whose client has ultimately had a bad experience because they were either sold something that couldn't be delivered, or the transaction was handled badly, and it is not the way it should be done. And the client ultimately is the one that suffers.
Yeah, but this is where the whole split comes down to, because I'd say a bad broker is, you talk about commission splits on a deal when you've got different brokers on either side, but we've had situations where we're literally carrying the other broker, and we're almost doing the deal, and then they're still saying we want to still have the same split. That's when I think you should look at splits. But it's about competency, and that doesn't matter if you're small or big, because there's different levels of competency within these companies. That's what I find frustrating, is when we get people coming and saying, hey, I'm a yacht broker, I want 60% of the commission, and then you're carrying the whole deal for both sides. And the guy's managed to kind of like be best buddies with the buyer, but he's really not adding any value, and we're having to make all the paperwork work, make all the legals work.
All part of the deal.
Well, is it?
All part of the deal, yeah. That's what I feel. It's our job to sift through that.
Well, I'll know just to sit back next time I do a deal with you, Chris. You're going to do it all. I'll take my 60%. Bloody good of him. You heard it here, guys.
Yeah, but I mean, look, when it comes to actually doing the deal, writing the MOA, finalizing the fine detail, such a tiny weeny part of the deal. The lawyers tend to do it mostly these days anyway. The deal for me is 99% working and getting the trust of the client, organizing the right thing at the right price for the right time for him or her. And then the actual putting together, the technical side of putting together a deal, yeah, sure. Some people do it really badly, in which case we have to do it all for them. Some people do it so brilliantly, like you, I don't have to do anything. But I mean, it is only a small part of the deal, and I totally accept that there are, bad brokers out there. But if somebody brings a Mr. Big into the industry as a broker and creates a deal which otherwise wouldn't have happened, it's a deal. And if I've got the boat for sale and he's some one-man band from out back in Australia, we've never heard of him, but he brings a viable buyer, I'll deal with him, even if he's bad, and try and organize it the best way I can for the client. I mean, I agree it'd be a perfect world if we didn't have them, but we do.
Gents, it's been fascinating, compelling, exciting, fun. But we've got to wrap up, I'm afraid. That's 40 minutes. We could go on for ages. There's loads more questions. I'm sure people have got questions for you if you're hanging around afterwards. But for now, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.